Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror TV series named Urban Legend, Season 1. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The first story, titled The Red Room, begins with a man waking from unconsciousness, finding himself tied to a chair, unable to move. Out of the darkness, a woman emerges, dressed in high heels and a tight leather outfit, her face concealed by a ghost mask. She gently caresses his cheek, then moves to the live streaming control panel. The viewers of the live stream are given a choice of 3 methods of death: the fire-blasting firefighter, the chainsaw maniac, or the glamorous magician. After an enthusiastic round of voting from the fans, the magician's option leads by a large margin. With the opening of an iron door accompanied by music, a figure steps out. It's a splendidly dressed yet bloody magician. He approaches the man, lighting a match in his hand. The man shakes his head in terror, but in the next moment, the match transforms into a rose. The magician, holding the rose, bows to the camera in appreciation of his fans' love. He then picks up a pair of pliers, clamps onto the man's tongue, and cuts it off, preventing him from tongue massaging any women. The magician holds up the bloody tongue for the camera, then turns around and plunges a dagger into the man's jaw, ending his life. He then bows gracefully and retreats back through the iron door. The live stream garners nearly $40,000 in tips. The hostess turns off the live streaming equipment and approaches the dead man, telling him it's all over. The man, smiling, lifts his head and says his performance wasn't too bad. It turns out this was all a fake performance. The man, holding a prop tongue in his hand, comments on how realistic it is and describes the experience as thrilling. At that moment, the magician behind him pulls out a gun. The hostess tells the man she knows where he lives, where his child goes to school, and he must not speak of today's events to anyone. She then hands him a stack of money and tells him to disappear. The magician retreats backstage, removes his mask, and places the prop tongue on a shelf. The room is filled with realistic human body parts and 3 sets of work uniforms. The hostess, Majesty, takes off her mask, hands a pile of money to a man named Max, and informs him that the live stream had fewer viewers than before. Although Max's performance was good, if things continue this way, their streaming team will have to disband. The two decide to discuss their next steps tomorrow. Upon returning home, Majesty opens her safe and retrieves an electronic device. She converts today's earnings into cryptocurrency. Looking at a picture nearby, she thinks of her daughter. Early the next day, Majesty goes to her daughter's residence to talk, but is stopped by her daughter's boyfriend. It's only after pulling out a stun gun that she's able to see her daughter. Majesty mentions a venture she's been working on that could potentially change their lives and asks if they could talk somewhere quiet. However, her daughter replies that she has nothing to say to her. Majesty offers her daughter the stun gun for self-defense, but her daughter refuses, saying the only person she needs to defend against is Majesty herself. That night, Majesty goes to a film studio to find Max. After he clears the studio of personnel and closes the main door, they start to discuss their plans in the room. Max presents photos of several female actors, suggesting they could give them a try. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. Both Majesty and Max look at each other, puzzled, as they had just ensured everyone had left. Suddenly, the door bursts open, and a man wielding a gun storms in. He claims to be a loyal fan of their live stream and says he's finally found them after a long search. However, he's furious because he realized their live stream content is fake, and he feels deceived. He demands to reclaim his tips and compensation for emotional distress. The man asks how much money they have in their account, but when no one answers, he shoots Max in the leg. Max claims he doesn't know anything as he's just an employee. Upon hearing that Majesty is the boss, the man shoots Max twice, killing him. He then threatens Majesty's life using her daughter. It turns out he has an accomplice who has already kidnapped her daughter. Upon seeing her daughter in a video, Majesty capitulates. She brings the man to her house and hands over the electronic device from her safe. While he's busy inputting the password, Majesty uses the stun gun to knock him unconscious. When the man awakes, he finds himself tied up. Majesty, now wearing a mask, has already started the live stream. This time, she has something different planned. She allows her fans to choose any weapon from the wall to kill the man. The crossbow wins the vote by a wide margin. Majesty takes the crossbow off the wall and pulls the trigger. The first bolt misses, but she quickly reloads and fires a second bolt, hitting the man square in the chest. She steps forward, rips off the duct tape from his mouth, and demands to know who he is. The man hastily says it's Max who had orchestrated everything, and they only planned to put on a show and swindle Majesty's money. As Majesty twists the crossbow bolt embedded in his chest, the man screams in pain, insisting she can verify his story by checking the film studio. He swears he didn't kill Max earlier. After silencing the man, Majesty returns to the film studio. As he had claimed, Max's body is gone, leaving behind only a prop blood pack. Realizing she's been fooled, Majesty returns to the live stream. She uses pliers to hold the man's finger and demands to know her daughter's whereabouts. The man quickly reveals the location, but even after getting her answer, Majesty still breaks his finger. At the request of her live stream viewers, Majesty fires another bolt from the crossbow, piercing the man's throat. She then moves the camera close to the man's face to showcase the reality of the situation. After Majesty ends the live stream, she discovers that her viewer count has increased tenfold from before. Her rabid fans have tipped nearly $300,000 worth of gifts. At this time, Max, who had faked his death, meets with the accomplice who had kidnapped Majesty's daughter. They plan to wait for a message from their partner. They then receive a message sent from the man's phone by Majesty saying that everything is going smoothly and they should come to split the loot. Shortly after, there's a knock on the door. The kidnapper, sensing something amiss, draws his gun and approaches the open door, only to be stunned by Majesty hiding in the corner. She then straddles him and slices open his throat. Max rushes over and finds his accomplice's body bleeding out on the floor. Suddenly, the electricity in the warehouse is cut off, plunging the place into darkness. Max pulls out a flashlight and a knife from his bag, scanning his surroundings anxiously. Meanwhile, Majesty appears in her mask before her tied-up daughter and signals for her to be quiet. But the girl screams in fear, drawing Max back. He holds the knife to the girl's throat, hoping to force Majesty out. However, what greets him is a jolt from a stun gun. After Majesty unties her daughter, she watches her escape from the warehouse. When Max wakes up, he finds himself tied up in their live stream room. Majesty tells him she's found a way to boost their stream's popularity. Then, amidst Max's screams, Majesty lets him experience one piece of equipment after another, finally ending his life by stabbing a shoulder spike into his ear. After everything ends and Majesty removes her mask, she's stunned by the data from the live stream. The audience has multiplied several times over again, and the tipped gifts have reached 1 million. She has found her way to wealth. 8 months later, Majesty's daughter sends her mother a sobriety token, marking 6 months of abstinence. She then receives a call from her mother, telling her there's something in the air vent at home that could change her life. The girl opens the vent and retrieves a package filled with money that her mother had left for her. The second story, titled The Bite, begins with Rose and her husband Ben spending a wonderful honeymoon at a resort on an island in the Atlantic. The day before their honeymoon ended, Ben gave the waiter a $100 tip as a thank you for his attentive service. The waiter was very grateful for their generosity. A lady at the neighboring table saw this and kindly shared a secret with the couple. Her friend had visited the resort the previous year and discovered an incredible secret beach nearby. The lady and her friend had just been there the day before, and it was like a paradise that made them never want to leave. Moreover, it was not far from the resort. After sharing this secret, the woman scratched a few small blisters on her arm. Intrigued, Rose and her husband went to the beautiful beach. They quietly enjoyed the caress of the sea breeze. Ben said that if they ever had children, their lives might not be as leisurely. Rose, however, believed he would make a great father. While Ben went swimming, a black spider crawled out of a hole in the sand and stealthily made its way toward Rose on the beach. Just as Rose lay down to sunbathe, the spider crawled out from under the blanket and into her long hair while she was completely unaware and fell asleep. After Rose and her husband returned from their vacation, she suddenly noticed 2 small bumps on the left side of her face. She thought they were bug bites from the resort and didn't pay them much attention. However, that night, Rose woke up and realized the bumps seemed to have grown. She rushed to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and was startled by what she saw. She quickly woke up her husband. Ben examined her face and thought it might be related to the body's immune response, as wounds could swell before healing. Rose discovered she had a slight fever and felt uneasy. Ben comforted her and promised to take her to the doctor the next day. With that, Rose turned off the light and went back to sleep. The next day, the couple went to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor didn't think it was bedbug bites, since those wouldn't cause swelling. However, he wasn't sure what it was, so he scheduled an appointment with a dermatologist for Rose, but they'd have to wait a week. Rose had recently seen some terrifying news about flesh-eating maggots infesting humans, but the doctor assured her it wasn't that, and advised her to stay away from the internet and get some rest. Unable to resist, Rose searched online when she got home, frightening herself even more. She wanted to have a glass of wine to calm her nerves, but her husband dissuaded her. Angry, Rose went back to bed. The next day, Ben woke up to find Rose's face swollen with a huge lump. Panic-stricken, Rose locked herself in the bathroom and examined her face in the mirror. She noticed a black object poking out from the wound on her face. Ignoring her husband's pleas from outside the door, Rose mustered her courage and gently pulled the object with tweezers. To her horror, she extracted a large spider from the wound. Screaming, Rose fainted, and countless small spiders crawled out of her wound. This was only the beginning of her terrifying nightmare. When Rose woke up, she was in the hospital. Seeing the wound on her face, she wanted to go home, but Ben told her they needed to wait for her fever to subside and the test results to come back. Rose suddenly blamed her husband for everything, shocking him with her profanity. She quickly realized her outburst and tearfully apologized, saying she didn't know what had come over her. Back home, Ben called the resort they had visited and got in touch with the waiter. He told him about what had happened to his wife and asked if anything similar had ever occurred. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, and the waiter said it wasn't safe to talk on the phone. He asked Ben to leave his number and he would call back later. At that moment, Rose suddenly woke up from her sleep in pain. Sitting up and touching her mouth, she pulled out a blood-covered tooth. Terrified, she got off the bed and went to the sink, where she continued to pull out one tooth after another. Even more horrifying, small spiders crawled out of the teeth that fell into the sink. It turned out to be just a nightmare. A nearby doctor informed her that she couldn't leave the hospital as planned the next day. They had discovered an abnormality in her brain MRI, so more tests were needed. Despite this news, Rose stubbornly demanded to be discharged the following day. Ben couldn't wait for the waiter's call, so he searched online and found a woman who had reported the resort for hiding the truth. The woman informed Ben that 4 years ago, after the resort opened, some staff members disappeared. The resort compensated the employees' families, so nobody outside knew about it. However, some guests who returned to the U.S. from the resort began to behave strangely. One mother of 4 drove her car into a crowd, and another guest killed his entire family. Neither had a history of mental illness, but they had both stayed at the resort. Before the island resort was built, it was surrounded by a primeval forest, and no one knew what was in the jungle. The woman's connection was suddenly cut off, and Ben noticed a spider crawling through his window, heading towards him as he lay on the couch. He narrowly avoided the spider as it tried to enter his ear, only to be awakened by the sound of the front door opening. To his surprise, Rose, who was supposed to be at the hospital, had returned home. Rose lied to her husband, saying the doctor had discharged her, but as soon as she entered the bathroom, she started frantically rubbing the swollen wound on her face and making strange, growling noises. Ben became increasingly suspicious and tried to call the hospital, but the telephone lines were too busy. Then, a strange number sent him a video of a person crawling on all 4s who roared at the camera. The terrifying face made Ben's heart race. He called the number, and the waiter's voice came through. He explained that the person in the video was his sister, who had passed out drunk on the beach near the resort. Days later, she began attacking her family. They took her to the resort for a diagnosis, but she was locked up and told she had contracted a virus that altered her brain. The waiter knew it was the spiders' doing. These spiders would enter the human body through a wound, hatch their young, and infiltrate the brain, affecting the person's behavior. The waiter had signed a confidentiality agreement and couldn't reveal the outcome to his sister, but he told Ben that if Rose was bitten, she was doomed. Ben went to the bathroom and found the door ajar, with a pool of blood on the floor. He wondered where Rose had gone when the power suddenly went out, plunging the house into darkness. Using his phone as a light, Ben entered the kitchen to find the electrical panel opened. He was then struck unconscious by his wife using a heavy object. When Ben woke up, he found himself tied to the bed, unable to move. His wife stood at the foot of the bed, staring at him intently. As Ben tried to reason with Rose, she crawled onto him as a spider approached. Ben tried to convince his wife to regain her senses, but she spat a viscous liquid onto him and held his head, allowing the spider to crawl into his ear. Ben's chicken screams echoed through the empty room. When he woke up again, he found himself wrapped in a white spider's web. Countless tiny spiders hatched from his wounds, and Rose smiled with satisfaction like a spider pig, saying she knew he would be a good spider father. The third story, titled The White Dress, begins with Rachel and her friend Leah visiting a vintage clothing store in town, hoping to find a dress for the upcoming school dance. While browsing, Rachel's eyes were drawn to a white lace dress in the corner. Not only was it her size, but she also loved the style. At Leah's suggestion, Rachel tried on the white dress, and it looked even more stunning than she had imagined. However, she discovered that the dress was expensive, and she only had half the required amount. In the end, Leah generously offered to cover the rest of the cost, and Rachel bought the dress. When Rachel got home, she immediately put on her new dress and admired herself in the mirror. Suddenly, she noticed a strange hormone odor and sprayed some perfume on the dress. Just as she was feeling pleased with herself, she found a black stain on the left side of the dress. It felt dry to the touch, and as she prepared to wash it off, it seemed like someone pulled on the dress, but no one was there. Rachel called Leah to confirm there had been no strange smell or stain when they bought the dress, and she proceeded to clean the stain. That night, while Rachel was reading about the dance, her laptop suddenly ran out of power. She spotted the charger under the bed, and as she reached for it, she saw a pair of pale feet across from her. Startled, she quickly stood up, but there was nothing there, except for the white dress hanging nearby. Before going to bed, Rachel hung the dress inside her closet. Just as she turned off the light and prepared to sleep, she heard the sound of the closet door opening. Rachel sat up and looked at the dark closet but saw nothing unusual. She turned on the light, took the dress out of the closet, and hung it on the mirror. However, when she turned off the light again, the dress hanging on the mirror began to move, as if someone was wearing it and walking towards her. The creaking of the wooden floor woke Rachel up, and she quickly turned on the light, only to see the dress falling to the floor. Rachel picked up the eerie dress and no longer dared to keep it in her bedroom. She decided to hang it on the bathroom door instead. But as soon as she closed her bedroom door, there was a knocking sound. Thinking it was her naughty mother, she called out twice, but there was no answer. Suppressing her fear, Rachel opened the door and saw a white figure drift into the bathroom, while the dress that had been hanging on the door disappeared. She thought the figure might be her mother wearing the dress, so she called her mother's name. At that moment, her mother's bedroom door opened, and her mother, rubbing her eyes, asked what happened. Seeing her mother, Rachel wondered who had just entered the bathroom. Before Rachel could tell her mother what she saw, her mother walked into the bathroom. A moment later, she came out and asked why the dress was on the floor, then hung it back on the door and returned to her bedroom. Meanwhile, Rachel lay in bed, terrified, keeping an eye on her bedroom door, fearing the mysterious dress might reappear. The next morning, Rachel woke up from her piggy sleep, only to find herself oddly wearing the white dress, and her bedroom door was wide open. As she got out of bed, she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. When she looked in the mirror, her stomach was covered in dark purple bruises. She quickly took a photo and sent it to Leah, but she couldn't explain what had happened the night before. At school, Leah suggested that the bruises might have been caused by Rachel sleepwalking and bumping into something. Suddenly, Rachel spotted her dress on the school's photo wall. Leah mentioned that she knew the girl in the photo wearing the white dress. The girl had been a few grades above them, but she had passed away in an accident. Leah advised Rachel to return the ominous dress to the clothing store. However, the store clerk said that, as stated on the receipt, their store did not accept returns. Rachel insisted that the dress was strange and had caused her injuries, but the clerk claimed they couldn't help and were unwilling to disclose the origin of the dress. Frustrated, Rachel grabbed the clerk's hand and demanded the clerk to write down the name of the person who sold the dress. When she returned home, she noticed that the black stains on the dress had multiplied. She went to the basement and placed the dress in the washing machine. As she turned around, the washing machine door suddenly opened on its own. Rachel closed the glass door in confusion, added laundry detergent, and turned her back, only for the door to open again. A hand reached out from the washing machine, scaring Rachel and causing her to fall to the floor. Then the washing machine's electrical wires short-circuited, sparking. Rachel felt something was off and began to search online for information about the girl in the photo wearing the dress. She discovered that the girl had been the school's prom queen, but had died after being poisoned. Upon researching the name Marcus, which she had obtained from the clerk, Rachel found out that he worked at a funeral home in town. To uncover the truth, Rachel took the dress to the funeral home. Upon entering, she discovered the place was dark and eerie. As Rachel called out Marcus's name, a man responded from a distant room. Following the voice, she reached a room at the end of the hallway, but she still couldn't see the person speaking. As she was about to leave, the room's light suddenly turned on, and the man who entered was Marcus. Rachel held up the dress and asked why he had sold it, but Marcus denied ever having seen the dress before. Rachel insisted the dress was haunted and needed help, but Marcus just laughed at her. He claimed to have worked in the funeral industry for 15 years and had never seen a ghost. Unable to explain herself, Rachel left dejectedly. What Rachel didn't know was that shortly after she left, Marcus opened a nearby coffin and began to remove the deceased person's clothing. He covered the corpse's suit with a plastic bag and carried it into his office. Rachel returned home to find her mother and Leah anxiously waiting for her. However, she was in a foul mood and went straight to her room to sleep. Her mother had no choice but to let Leah sleep on the couch. The next day was the dance, and Rachel, still feeling irritated, turned off the lights and went to bed. Suddenly, she heard a rustling sound behind her. When she got up to investigate, she only found the white dress. Just as she was about to go back to sleep, it seemed like someone crawled onto the bed behind her. In the darkness, Rachel opened her eyes, convinced she wasn't imagining things. She turned her head and saw a female ghost sitting on her bed, staring at her. Terrified, she screamed. Leah, who was sleeping in the living room, rushed in upon hearing the scream. She removed the dress that was covering Rachel. By then, it was already 9 a.m. Leah could see that Rachel looked as if she hadn't slept all night and suggested that she should get rid of the ominous dress. However, Rachel became furious, accusing Leah of being jealous and not wanting to see Rachel looking good in the dress. Leah didn't expect Rachel to say such hurtful words, so she threw the dance tickets at her and stormed off. That's when Rachel noticed that the veins on her arm were turning black. After apologizing, Leah forgave Rachel, and the two went to the dance together that evening. When their classmates saw Rachel, they were all shocked. Rachel suddenly covered her mouth and ran to the bathroom, where she vomited profusely. After recovering, she washed her hands and saw her haggard reflection in the mirror. She realized that no matter how beautiful the dress was, it wouldn't make a difference. Rachel tried to remove the cursed dress, but found it impossible to take off. The next moment, a terrifying face appeared in the mirror, causing her to step back in fear and fall to the floor. Struggling to get up, Rachel looked at her reflection again, trying to confirm whether it was her face or not. Just then, she heard Leah's voice from outside the bathroom. As she turned to look, a female ghost wearing the white dress lunged at her. Rachel screamed like a chicken as the ghost grabbed her, and she fought back, choking the ghost and pinning her against the bathroom door. The ghost slowly stopped struggling and fell silent. At that moment, Rachel realized that she had accidentally choked her friend Leah to death. Crying and calling Leah's name, black blood began to flow from Rachel's mouth and running nose, and she lost consciousness. A week later, Rachel's body lay in a funeral home, waiting to be cremated. Marcus told his assistant that Rachel had been poisoned by a substance similar to a preservative, which caused severe hallucinations before death. He then said he would cremate Rachel and found an excuse to send his assistant away. After she left, Marcus opened Rachel's coffin and began to remove her clothes. Once finished, he sealed the white dress and brought it to his office. Picking up the business card from the clothing store, he dialed the phone. Soon, the white dress would have a new owner. The fourth story, titled The Choking Doberman, begins with a woman named Lily playing the piano in her room when a baby's cry interrupted her. Then, her neighbor, Mike, called her, but there was no response on the other end of the line, only a man's scream. She hung up, and a man's cry for help interrupted her again. He was banging on the door, shouting to be saved. Lily was about to open the door when she discovered that the man had already collapsed. She returned to her room and called Mike, only to hear the ringing of the man's phone outside her door. Gathering her courage, she walked over and turned on the light, only to find out that the man crying for help was Mike. The police arrived shortly after, asked her a few questions, and from their conversation we learned that Lily lived alone in the house and didn't seem to have any relatives or friends. The next day, Lily had workers install a new security system throughout the house. All doors and windows were equipped with sensors and smart locks, which she could control using a tablet or smartphone. The system would also automatically unlock in case of a fire. As the workers left, they handed her a manual and expressed their admiration and envy for her house. She then brought home her adopted Doberman, who seemed to have attacked someone in the past. It appeared that the previous incident had made Lily feel unsafe, and she needed a dog for company. That night, Lily practiced boxing in her room, following along with a TV program. Afterward, she sat on the sofa painting when her deceased neighbor Mike called her. Puzzled, Lily answered the phone, but there was no response from the other end. After he hung up, she called Mike's number and heard the ringing from under the sofa. She leaned down to check underneath the sofa, and as she turned around, she saw Mike's corpse. Then, Lily woke up from her nightmare, realizing it was just a dream. Frightened, she called for her dog. The next day, Lily returned from grocery shopping and called for her dog, only to find that he seemed to have eaten something and was having trouble breathing. She immediately drove him to the pet hospital, where the vet informed her that the Doberman had swallowed something that nearly suffocated him. Thankfully, she had arrived just in time. Although he was out of danger, the dog still needed to stay at the hospital overnight for observation. Lily had no choice but to drive home alone. Back at home, she unpacked the snacks she had bought from the supermarket and noticed her phone was out of battery. She went upstairs to charge it in her bedroom, but failed to notice the bloodstains on the handle of the door on the first floor. Lily charged her phone in the bedroom, then grabbed a towel and went to the bathroom, only to find the faucet still running. She thought she must have forgotten to turn it off and didn't pay much attention. As she continued to shower in the bathroom, there seemed to be noises outside the door. Meanwhile, her phone in the bedroom received a call from the vet. After her shower, Lily noticed her bathroom towel had disappeared, but she still didn't pay much attention. She walked out of the bathroom without checking her phone and headed straight downstairs. At that moment, her phone in the bedroom received a text from the vet, warning her not to return to the house. While pouring water in the kitchen, Lily noticed bloody footprints on the floor. At that moment, she finally remembered her phone and raced to her bedroom to check the messages from the vet. It turned out that 3 human fingers had been found in the dog's stomach, suggesting that someone had been in her house and got attacked by the dog. That's why the vet had warned her not to go home. But Lily was already inside. Following the bloody trail, she realized that the person the vet mentioned might be hiding in her bedroom. In a panic, she rushed downstairs to open the door, only to find her phone had run out of battery. Hearing approaching footsteps, Lily hid in a cabinet. The man searched tirelessly for her as his footsteps grew more distant. Lily quietly crawled out of the cabinet and, sticking close to the wall, heard the man going upstairs. She found the security system manual in a drawer and discovered how to unlock the door without her phone. Lily set the manual on fire and brought over a chair, hoping the smoke would trigger the fire alarm. Although her plan worked, the smart lock closed automatically as she reached the door. Desperate, Lily pounded on the door, attracting the man upstairs, who soon arrived and began fighting with her. During the struggle, Lily managed to rip off the man's mask, revealing him as the same man who had installed her security system. She knocked him out with a heavy object and found a tablet to open the window, escaping outside for her shitty life. Frantically, she ran towards the road and soon saw a passing car. She banged on the window, begging for help. The woman inside seemed unwilling to help, but after some struggle, the driver opened the door. However, Lily soon realized they were taking her in the wrong direction. As she tried to escape, they knocked her out. When Lily awoke, she found herself still in the car, with the woman and the man arguing in front of the vehicle. Spotting a mask inside the car, she crawled into the trunk and managed to escape. Armed with a steel rod she found on the ground, she hid in a nearby pile of old cars. The woman and man soon discovered Lily had escaped, and the woman searched relentlessly with a flashlight and hammer. By now, Lily was hidden in an old car, waiting for the right moment. Just as she was about to open the door to check on the woman, she found her lurking behind her, and they wrestled their skinny muscles again. During the fight, Lily stabbed the woman in the neck with the steel rod. Meanwhile, the man seemed to be waiting for the woman, unaware that Lily was sneaking up behind him. She ended his life with the steel rod. After killing the man, Lily took his phone and called the police. Back at the pet hospital, the vet received a call from the police, who demanded the fingers they had found earlier. However, the vet discovered the fingers were missing, and it seemed a staff member had disposed of them. After this harrowing experience, Lily further reinforced her home's windows. When she opened the cabinet later, she found the 3 fingers preserved in a jar, indicating that the real killer was still stalking her. The 5th story, titled The Harvest, begins with a newly divorced man, Clay, becoming addicted to dating apps. Lonely, he matched with a girl named Tasha. They quickly agreed to meet at a bar. However, when Clay called over the waitress seemed to recognize the girl and called her Talia. After the waitress left, the girl claimed that Talia was just her nickname, and the waitress was her classmate. Clay, not paying attention to these small details, continued the conversation. They talked about their age difference, but the girl didn't mind, claiming she had a severe daddy complex and calling Clay Dad. At this point, Clay mentioned his recent divorce and that he was a father of 2. From his expression, it was clear he thought his decision to divorce was very wise. The scene then shifted to a motel. Clay woke up with a splitting headache and unbearable pain in his abdomen. He lifted the blanket covering him and discovered a stitched-up wound on the right side of his belly. On the motel wall, there was a photo with a warning not to call the police. Struggling, Clay got out of bed, retrieved his phone from his pants, and found that the girl's account had been deleted. So, he contacted his private doctor, Bell, and sent him a photo of the wound. Bell believed that someone had stolen one of Clay's kidneys, but reassured him that people could live normally with just one kidney. However, Clay was incredibly upset because he had undergone surgery in his youth and already only had one kidney left, which had now been taken. Bell told him to calm down and informed him that he could survive for 48 hours without a kidney, but he needed to undergo dialysis immediately. After asking for the motel's address, Bell quickly arrived, bandaged Clay's wound, and prepared to take him to the hospital for treatment. But Clay refused. As Bell was driving him to a friend's house for dialysis, Clay received a call from a number labeled Clay's Kidney. The voice on the other end was male, claiming that he could return Clay's kidney. Clay asked how much money the man wanted, but the man hung up and sent him an address. Clay immediately asked Bell to stop the car, knowing that even if he went to the hospital and got on the donor list, it could take 2 or 3 years before it would be his turn. With only 36 hours left to live, he asked Bell to accompany him to the address. When they arrived at the destination, they found it to be an abandoned factory. Entering, they found it pitch black inside, so they split up to search. Bell headed upstairs while Clay went to the basement. At the end of a room, he discovered a makeshift operating room with various organs carelessly placed in a metal basin. Just as Clay was about to take a photo, 2 men wearing surgical gowns appeared and asked him to sign a transfer document for $250,000. Clay opened a fridge to see a kidney, but realized the kidney looked old and wasn't his. His 2 kidneys had previously failed, and his ex-wife had donated one to him. Clay wanted to negotiate, but the men said this wasn't a supermarket, and their boss was watching Clay's children. With no choice, Clay signed the document. However, after he signed, the men turned against him. They drove Clay to an operating table, strapped him down, and used anesthetic gas to render him unconscious. In a state between sleep and wakefulness, he saw a hand emerge from his wound and screamed in terror. When Clay woke up, he found himself alone and struggling. He hailed a cab to the hospital, worried about the safety of Bell. Along the way, he tried calling Bell, but no one answered. Suddenly, he remembered the waitress from the bar and immediately turned the car around to find her. Under Clay's threat, the waitress revealed Tasha's address. When the girl opened the door, Clay tackled her to the ground. She managed to bite the hand covering her mouth before grabbing a gun from the cabinet. However, Clay disarmed her. With no other choice, Tasha explained the whole situation to him. A man had approached her, offering her a large sum of money to date Clay and slip something into his drink behind his back. Clay was shocked when he heard the man's name. It was his personal doctor, Bell. Tasha confirmed this with a photo. Just as Clay was questioning his life, Tasha lunged at him, attempting to take the gun. He shot her dead in response. Clay tracked Bell to a hospital and was surprised to find him at his ex-wife's residence. With a gun in hand, he followed Bell inside, only to discover that his ex-wife was the mastermind behind it all. She blamed Clay's infidelity for their failed marriage and justified taking back the kidney that originally belonged to her. That explains why she forced Clay to sign the fake transfer document. Clay felt unwell and took the box containing the kidney, intending to go to the hospital. However, his vision blurred as he tried to leave, and Bell took advantage of the opportunity to pin him down. When Clay woke up again, he found himself lying alone in a desolate field, with the kidney in a box in the middle of a crossroad. A note in his ex-wife's handwriting stated that she was giving him a chance. One road led 10 miles to a store, while the others were dead ends. If he could reach the phone booth at the store entrance in time and call the hospital, she would give him the kidney. However, he only had 12 hours. Left with no choice, Clay picked a direction and began his journey. A week later, a store owner went on vacation, closing their shop. In the shut store, the kidney in the box was swarming with flies and insects. Beside the phone booth lay Clay's lifeless body. Strangely enough, the telephone line inside the booth had also been cut. This indicates that Clay had never been given a chance to survive, and it speaks volumes about the desperation Clay must have felt before his death. The 6th story, titled The Creep in the Walls, begins with 2 sisters inheriting a century-old house in the countryside after their mother passed away. One day they drove out to the house intending to renovate it. Upon entering, they found the house to be quite spacious and, aside from the dated furniture, were pleased with the place. Each sister chose a large bedroom, and then they began cleaning the living room. The younger sister, Hallie, set up a camera in her room to document their new life, programming it to automatically take a photo every 30 seconds. By the time they finished cleaning, night had fallen. The sisters ordered some stir-fried noodles, but just as they were about to dig in, the lights in the hallway began to flicker. The older sister, Robin, laughed at the nervous Hallie, explaining that the old house was bound to have some electrical issues, and they would just call an electrician the next day. Hallie put the leftover noodles in the fridge. While cleaning a glass, she accidentally spilled a drink on herself. As she was about to change clothes, she suddenly heard footsteps behind her. When she turned around, however, she only saw a wall with an old-fashioned wall clock. Hallie thought she must be imagining things, but as she turned back, the clock chimed, startling her. Later that night, Hallie was awakened by the sound of a vacuum cleaner. Assuming it was Robin cleaning in the middle of the night, she stepped out of her room and realized the noise wasn't coming from Robin's room, but from the kitchen downstairs. As she called Robin's name and walked down the stairs, she noticed a rotting smell in the stairwell. Just as she was about to enter the kitchen, the lights suddenly dimmed and began to flicker again. Terrified, Hallie turned to run, only to be startled by Robin, who had been standing behind her. Hallie asked Robin if she had been sleepwalking, explaining that she had heard noises and seen the kitchen light flickering. Robin, however, dismissed it as the house being old and in disrepair, suggesting the sounds were likely due to aging pipes. With that, she returned to her room to sleep. Back in her room, Hallie felt uneasy, so she turned on her phone's recording mode and placed it by her bedside to prevent any further confusion from potential auditory hallucinations. The next morning, Robin went to the bathroom to brush her teeth and wash up. She noticed her toothbrush seemed to have been used, but Hallie insisted she hadn't touched it. Robin then pulled a twisted hair from the bristles, which almost made her gag. After waking up, Hallie found that her phone had no audio recordings. She went to the kitchen and saw Robin rummaging through the fridge for food. Strangely, the leftover stir-fried noodles from the day before had disappeared. They were the only two people in the house, and a mouse couldn't have opened the refrigerator door. At that moment, Robin also smelled the rotten odor and decided to call a plumber to check the house's pipes the next day. At night, Hallie set her phone to record again before going to sleep. This time, she woke up in the middle of the night and put on her headphones to listen to the recordings. Soon, she heard footsteps near the wall. She quietly turned on the light, but saw nothing. Suddenly, there was a noise at the window, which frightened her so much that she ran to Robin's room to sleep with her. The next morning, Hallie wanted to tell Robin about the strange noises, but once again, the audio recordings had disappeared. The plumber arrived and began examining the source of the foul smell in the bathroom, while Hallie and Robin went to the hardware store in town. After they left, the plumber heard footsteps in the room. He stepped out and called out loudly, but no one responded. As he continued working, the footsteps came from behind him again. He turned around, seemingly seeing something terrifying, and started screaming like a goose. When Hallie and Robin returned home, they found that the plumber had apparently left. No one answered when they tried calling him. Back in the living room, Hallie realized she had forgotten to turn off the camera the previous night. As she reviewed the photos before bed, she discovered an image of someone wearing a short skirt. Later that night, Hallie got up to get a drink of water and saw that the living room window was open. Just as she closed it, she caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing behind the curtains. Terrified, she screamed in horror. Hearing Hallie's screams, Robin rushed downstairs and they prepared to leave the house. However, they discovered that someone had written their names in blood in the kitchen. Frightened, the sisters ran to their car outside and called the police. Through the car window, Hallie saw what seemed like someone watching her from behind the curtains on the second floor. After the police arrived, they inspected every room but found nothing unusual. They brought the officer to the kitchen, only to discover the bloodstains on the wall had vanished without a trace. The officer thought they were playing a prank on him and told them the house was safe and to contact him if anything happened. Unable to explain the situation, Hallie and Robin decided to set up a camera in the living room again to capture any potential evidence. The next day, Hallie went to the town's housing authority to check the house's floor plan. To her surprise, she found discrepancies between the blueprint and the house they were living in. She took a photo of the blueprint and showed it to Robin. They noticed an extra room on the blueprint. The sisters went to the kitchen and opened a wall closet that was supposed to be a door on the blueprint. After prying off the closet's back panel, they discovered a hidden passage. Boldly, Robin crawled through the passageway and found a room filled with trash and a bed, as if someone had been living there. She told Hallie to call the police, but Hallie's phone had gone missing. They had just used it on the couch to view the floor plan. After searching for a while, they couldn't find it, so Robin called Hallie's number, and the ringtone came from behind the couch. They moved the couch and found another hidden passage. Robin crawled in again, discovering that it connected to various rooms in the house. Obviously, someone had been living there and spying on them. Hallie also found a photo of a naked man crawling out from behind the couch on her camera. In the passageway, Robin found a transparent film with their names written on it, just like the bloody writing in the kitchen. There was also a hole in the wall that looked right into their bedroom. Suddenly, a man lunged at Robin, shouting that it was his house. Terrified, Robin fled, stumbling upon the missing plumber's dead body during her escape. Hearing Robin's chicken screams, Hallie grabbed an electric nail gun and entered the passageway to rescue her sister. Following the sounds, she saw the man reaching out to grab Robin. Hallie fired 2 nails at him, but the pain only enraged him more. He abandoned his pursuit of Robin on the stairs and chased after Hallie instead. It didn't take long for the man to catch up with her and pin her sexy body against the wall. Hearing the struggle, Robin grabbed a hammer and smashed the wall, scaring Hallie even more. Hallie struggled with all her might and eventually managed to swap positions with the man. As Robin's hammer struck the wall again, the noise inside the wall ceased and blood began to flow from the hole. Not knowing who she had hit, Robin kept calling Hallie's name. Fortunately, it was the man who had been struck, and the 2 sisters, who had narrowly escaped death, hugged each other and cried. Not long after, Hallie returned to her apartment in the city. Just after finishing a phone call with Robin, she noticed her desk lamp flickering on and off. Then she heard a sound coming from behind the wall. Fighting her fear, she pressed her ear against the wall. It turned out to be just a nightmare. Waking up in wet pants, she looked at the wall by her bed and pressed her ear against it, just like in her dream. This time, however, there was no sound coming from the other side. The 7th story, titled The Scuba Diver, begins with a man, Nick, being suddenly awakened by his daughter's call. She had just experienced a terrifying nightmare and clung to her father's hand, not wanting him to leave. Nick stayed and began to tell her stories. He spoke about his career as a diver and how the ocean floor was a magical place with sights that most people would never see. He promised to take her there when she grew up. His daughter then begged Nick not to go to work the next day, as her nightmare had been about him, and she had a bad feeling. Seeing the concern in his daughter's eyes, Nick didn't want to upset her, so he agreed not to go on the planned cave dive. Instead, he would do a simple dive in a nearby lake. The next day, Nick drove to a beautiful lake and put on his full diving gear. As he walked into the water, he suddenly heard the sound of helicopter propellers above him. A helicopter was using a basket to scoop up water from the lake to fight a nearby fire, and accidentally scooped Nick up too. Trapped in the basket, Nick struggled to no avail. The helicopter flew over a smoking forest and released the water, along with Nick, who plummeted into the trees. After some time, the thick smoke woke Nick up and he found himself in the middle of a raging fire. Unable to see clearly, he put on his diving mask and surveyed his surroundings, realizing that he had been dropped into a forest fire. With smoke choking him and causing him to cough, Nick had no choice but to crawl through the underbrush. Soon, he spotted his lost oxygen tank hanging from a tree. Needing it to breathe, he climbed up the tree towards the tank. However, just as he reached it, the branch beneath him snapped, and Nick fell, impaled by a sharp branch in his abdomen. In pain, he struggled to sit up and put on the oxygen tank. While it temporarily relieved him from the smoke, the tank only had 34 minutes of oxygen left, and his abdominal wound was severe. Nick noticed a ranger tower on a nearby hill, which should have a backup communication system to send a distress signal. But as he headed in that direction, his path was blocked by a sea of flames. Nick recalled the bedtime story he had told his daughter about a raccoon who had lost its parents and would do anything to find them, never giving up in the face of adversity. He had taught his daughter that sometimes life would present unforeseen challenges, but they had to face them and persevere. Just like the raccoon in the story, Nick knew he had to press on to survive and protect his daughter. At that moment, the sound of helicopter blades interrupted Nick's thoughts. It was the very same helicopter that had brought him into the forest. Nick frantically waved and shouted for help, but it had no effect. The remaining oxygen in his tank was now down to just 26 minutes. He tried to bypass the sea of flames and make his way to the ranger tower. Along the way, he encountered the body of a fallen ranger. Although he found a walkie-talkie on the ranger, no matter how much Nick called out, all he heard on the other end was a noisy electric current. Nick continued towards the ranger tower and discovered an abandoned camper. He went inside, removed his oxygen mask, and began to dry heave. There was no water left in the kettle, but he found a first aid kit with some rubbing alcohol and bandages. Bearing the pain, Nick painstakingly pulled the tree branch embedded in his abdomen. He then poured the alcohol on the wound to disinfect it, and the intense pain made him scream like a goose. He found a paperclip and used pliers to bend it into a hook shape, then began to stitch his wound and wrap it with bandages. Once everything was done, Nick, utterly exhausted, passed out. In his dream, he was with his daughter as she fell asleep one night. But he woke up in the middle of the night to find a fire outside and the sound of footsteps approaching. He called his wife's name, but received no response. As he turned to his sleeping daughter, he saw the footsteps had come right to the bedside. It was the burnt ranger. The sound of a call from the walkie-talkie woke Nick up. It was a U.S. Forest Service worker. Nick explained his situation and the worker promised to send help as soon as possible. With a weight lifted off his heart, Nick fell back into unconsciousness. In his next dream, his daughter, with her back to Nick, said he shouldn't be there. He thought she didn't want him to tell her stories, but she turned to Nick and asked if he could feel it. Just as Nick was puzzled, a burst of flame ignited on his body. Startled awake, Nick saw that the forest fire had reached the camper's doorstep. With no choice left, he put on his oxygen mask and left the camper. At daybreak, Nick received a message from the rescue team through the walkie-talkie. However, he was surrounded by thick smoke and had no idea of his location. The rescue team informed him that there was a ranger tower half a mile east of his original position and instructed him to head there. Nick was extremely fatigued and had lost a lot of blood, which caused him to experience hallucinations. His daughter suddenly appeared before him, and Nick hurriedly chased after her. However, she quickly disappeared from sight. Frantically shouting and searching, Nick spotted the deceased ranger behind a tree. He was so frightened that he fell to the ground and passed out. Before long, his survival instinct kicked in, and he opened his eyes once more. The oxygen tank was down to its last 3 minutes. At that moment, Nick caught a glimpse of his daughter waving at him. He followed her through the thick smoke until his oxygen was depleted. Finally, Nick arrived at the foot of the ranger tower. He shouted towards the top, but no one answered. With no other option, he tried to climb up himself. As he climbed, he recalled his strange farewell with his daughter the night before. She seemed off and wouldn't tell him about her dream. As they parted, she held his arm tightly and thanked him for his company. Just as Nick was completely drained, his daughter's figure appeared before him, reaching out her right hand. Nick tried to grasp her hand, but his body had lost all strength, and he fell from the stairs. The 8th story, titled The Haunted Shower, begins with the shot of a college freshman, Mara, who was on the phone with her mom while waiting in line for the shower. After hanging up, she anxiously asked her classmate, Emily, why the line was so long. It turned out the showers on the 2nd floor were broken, so everyone was queuing on this floor. Skeptical, Mara decided to check out the other floors. She asked the people in the elevator to wait, but when she opened the elevator doors, there was nobody inside. She pressed the button for the 4th floor, but the elevator went straight to the 5th floor. As the elevator doors opened, Mara grumbled about wanting to take the elevator back. She glanced down the hallway and thought that maybe the showers on this floor worked. She walked to the shower room in the hallway, following the sound of water. Upon entering, she found that although the showers weren't in the best condition, they were still usable. So Mara undressed and started showering. But suddenly the water stopped, and the lights went off. Just as she peeked out in confusion, the lights came back on. As Mara finished dressing and was about to leave, her fallen hair was pulled into the drain by something. The next day, Mara participated in a long jump test during her physical education class. After a quick sprint, she broke a new record. As she packed up her gear, the handsome coach, Cody, approached her to strike up a conversation. He wanted to get to know Mara, but a female classmate intervened just in time, inviting her to another classmate's house that night to celebrate the new record. Mara agreed, but said she needed to shower first. Having learned from her previous experience, she returned to the dorm and went straight to the 5th floor in the elevator. She happily took her shower, but the camera cut to another angle, revealing a naked man standing behind Mara. Suddenly, Mara seemed possessed, her eyes rolling back. She saw terrifying images, as if a man had been locked in the shower room. However, Mara soon returned to normal. Back in the dorm, she wanted to share her fears with her mom, but her classmate Emily interrupted her. Mara then shared her experience of showering on the 5th floor, saying she saw something bad. Emily told her that the 5th floor had been sealed off and the elevator couldn't possibly reach it. Mara thought it might be an elevator malfunction. Emily informed her of a rumor that a student went missing on the 5th floor a year ago, so the school closed off the entire floor. That evening, Mara was fast asleep like a pig when suddenly a drop of water fell on her face. Waking up, she thought it was one of her roommates playing a prank. Sitting up, she noticed liquid seeping from a hole in the door. Curious, she opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Water was flowing down from the staircase above. As Mara stared in confusion, she realized that the water at her feet had turned blood red. The elevator behind her slowly opened, and her body involuntarily backed into it. She found herself in the 5th floor shower room again. While showering, the water turned to blood, and a man whispered her name in her ear. Mara suddenly woke up, realizing it was just a nightmare. Her roommate was still asleep, and there was no liquid on the door. Mara sought out Cody, the handsome coach who had flirted with her earlier. He took her phone, followed himself on her social media account, but when Mara mentioned wanting to know more about the 5th floor, Cody's expression seemed off. After warning her to stay away from the 5th floor, he quickly drove away. That night, Mara found herself in the 5th floor shower room once more. While washing her hands, she accidentally dropped her ring into the drain. After lifting the cover and retrieving her ring, she found a broken pair of glasses. As she examined them, the lights went out, and Mara's eyes rolled back in her head. She saw fragments of a scene where a male student was cornered in the shower room, pleading with his attackers to let him go. Mara soon returned to normal, but she coughed up a piece of glass that matched the missing part of the glasses from the drain. Scared, she quickly left the area. During the night, her roommate was awakened by faint tearing noises. She got up to investigate and found Mara clawing at the wall, leaving bloody marks from her fingers. Her roommate quickly woke Mara up, but Mara claimed it was just a nightmare due to stress. The roommate then introduced Mara to psychological services. While consulting with them, Mara noticed her phone scrolling on its own. She saw a photo of 4 students who had once attended the school. Upon further investigation, she discovered that 3 of them had died under mysterious circumstances. Studying the photo, she spotted a man wearing glasses in the corner who seemed to be the person she had seen in the shower room. At that moment, the person on the phone congratulated her on finding the right person, and Mara noticed Cody in the group photo. Everything was becoming eerily connected. For the following week, Mara didn't show up on campus. She printed out a group photo of several people, circling the man with glasses, and wrote on the back, "Cody killed me." She scattered the pictures all around the campus. As soon as Cody saw the photo, he immediately drove away. When Mara's roommate Emily returned to their dorm, she also saw a similar photo. She called Mara, but no one answered. Emily then took the elevator to the 5th floor, following the sound of Mara's whispers that came from deep within the hallway. She found Mara sitting on the floor in the shower room talking to the air. Seeing Mara acting strangely, Emily tried to persuade her to return to the dorm. Mara, however, refused to leave him and claimed she would help him take the last person away. Then, she started combing her hair in front of the mirror in a bizarre manner. Emily wanted to keep persuading her to leave, but the mirror suddenly shattered. Under Mara's threat, Emily called the police and moved towards the elevator. However, as the call got disconnected, she looked back at the sealed staircase and saw a figure with rotting skin and glasses who screamed at her. Terrified, Emily retreated into the elevator and quickly closed the door. Meanwhile, at a party elsewhere, Cody seemed preoccupied as he sat on the couch. At the same time, Mara was on the 5th floor, putting on makeup in front of a mirror. She then brought the glasses she found in the drain to the party. Cody asked her about the photo, but Mara denied any involvement. Their eyes met, and a hint of attraction sparked between them. As they kissed, Mara slipped the glasses into Cody's pocket. They then entered the elevator where Mara blindfolded Cody and pressed the button for the 5th floor. Upon arriving, they went to the shower room on the 5th floor. As things heated up between them, Mara removed a broken piece from the glasses. She took off Cody's blindfold and stabbed the shard into his neck. Blood gushed out and Mara transformed into the figure with rotting skin and glasses. Cody writhed in pain on the floor, recalling the events from a year ago in that same shower room. Back then, he and 3 others had pushed the man with glasses into the shower room, blocked the door, and turned on the hot water. Despite the man's cries for help, they showed no sympathy and left him there until the noise stopped. After seeing that the man had died, the 4 people quickly fled. On the other side, Cody crawled into the shower room while Mara showered nearby. Suddenly, she snapped back to reality, seeing the man on the floor and blood all around her. Horrified, she was soon arrested by the police who had rushed to the scene. Meanwhile, in the hallway, the figure with glasses stared at her intently, possibly indicating that Mara also had to pay for her past sins. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.